Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
The world is not sleeping. So what's brewing? Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Tamar Yonah Show here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Well, last week I was talking to you on the show about this supposed new government coalition that is supposed to be born with the left. Naftali Bennett from the Yamina party, right, that Yamina means right in Hebrew, went and made a government with the left, and a party that only got around 7 seats in the Knesset out of 120. Their leader, their party leader, Naftali Bennett, is now going to be, if the vote is passed, the new prime minister of Israel. Is that right? Is that fair? Is that democratic? We might be able to talk about that. But also, I said that it's not a 100% sure thing that he is going to be the prime minister, and that this new shinui bloc, this left bloc, is going to take power. A lot can happen until the Knesset officially votes this new government in. A lot can happen. And what's happening now is that the Hamas is now threatening to break the ceasefire with Israel. If Israel holds a march of Jewish young people dancing with the flags in the streets in Jerusalem. Now, this flag parade was supposed to take place on Jerusalem Day, and it was moved aside. It was affected because the war broke out with Hamas and the terrorists. There was a lot of rioting. And so the question is, are we going to let the Hamas tell Israel what we can do, what we can't do? Who's running the country, Hamas or the Israeli Knesset and its own citizens? So we're going to be talking about that today, also about world politics. There are things happening in the world as we're going on our day-to-day things. The world is not sleeping. We'll be talking to a resident of Ashkelon as well, who came out with a video that's been going around WhatsApp about his anger about what's happening. We'll hear from him as well. Don't go anywhere, everybody. We're going to be right back.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on Israel News Talk Radio. So a lot is happening in Israel and around the world. Let's start with Israel. In this segment, I want to talk to you about the big news story that's going on. And as you know, Israel is on the verge of possibly voting in a left-wing government and ousting the prime minister that Netanyahu, who's been in power, I believe, over 10 years now, over 10 years straight, I should say, and they are thrilled about that. And everyone's pretty much accepting that Netanyahu's out and Bennett is going to be the next prime minister, and he's going to rotate that prime ministership later on with Yair Lapid from the center left, as he likes to describe himself. And I'm telling people that so much can happen. Anything can happen before the Knesset takes a vote later this week on whether they're going to swear in this new government or not. Now, if everything goes smoothly, it looks like they have enough signatures and votes to be able to form the next coalition here in Israel. However, as I said, a lot can happen. That is, if the Hamas should all of a sudden go to war against Israel again, then the Arabs who are part of this coalition agreement with the left can easily say, as they did before, that we're out. We don't want to be part of this Israeli government if they're attacking our brothers in Gaza. That's one thing that can happen. And I've also said, by the way, that Prime Minister Netanyahu, he doesn't even have to make a coalition government. He tried to. He didn't succeed. Bennett left, even though they promised him a lot, and his party. He left and brokered a deal very quickly afterwards with Yair Lapid and the left. But he doesn't even have to make a coalition, Bibi, in order to have another chance to remain the prime minister. All he has to do, really, is throw a wrench in the wheel of the left to prevent, if he can't make a government, then he's just going to do something to make sure that the left also can't make a government. And then what would happen? We would probably be going to new elections again, and then Bibi would have a chance again to be the prime minister, remain the prime minister. Now, let's remember that the Likud got at least 30 seats in the last election, far ahead of any other political party from the left or center. And to see somebody like Bennett, who it was on the right wing, now making a left-wing government, and he becoming prime minister with only 7 seats out of 120 is quite eyebrow-raising. A lot of his own supporters in the Yamina party, I should say his voters, are furious with Bennett. They say that he betrayed them, that he said that he was going to make sure there's going to be a right-wing government, that he wouldn't go with the left, and this is exactly what happened. But to be fair, folks, this happens all the time in politics. If you remember the last elections we had the Blue and White Party, who has run on the platform of anyone but Bibi. They were going to oust him. And in fact, Yair Lapid was in this block, this blue and white block, with Benny Gantz. And in the end, what happened? Benny Gantz went and joined the Netanyahu government, even though their whole platform was anyone but Bibi. Now, in his defense, and I just want to give, I'm not saying I agree or don't agree. I actually think he probably did the right thing, actually. But he said, we're in a national emergency. We got the corona. Remember, this was when corona came out. And we have to pull together and make an emergency government. And he went over and he got into the government with Netanyahu. And he became defense minister, which he still is today until a new government is sworn in and we have a new defense minister. But so that's what's happening in Israeli politics. Things like this happen all the time where people will switch sides. Whoever gets the better deal, that's where they're going to go. And that's politics, folks. But the thing I want to talk to you about is that people are furious. And there are demonstrations, and there are also people expressing their disgust. And one of these people was Rabbi Haim Jackman. Now, Rabbi Haim Jackman is a leading religious Zionist rabbi, and the left wing is trying to make it out that he's inciting people in Israel, citizens in Israel, to violence, to make sure that this government doesn't happen. Now, he did say that we should do everything we can to prevent this Bennett-Lapid government, but that doesn't mean he meant violence. In fact, Rabbi Jackman is a very big Zionist. He's a very big lover of Israel, of the IDF. I believe that he has a yeshiva that prepares soldiers or soon-to-be soldiers for the army. He loves Israel, and he's saying, why is what I said, which was I spoke about what many rabbis are saying now, and the head of the Shin Bet, or the Shabak, the interior security of Israel, made a statement. They showed that too with his the video of Rabbi Jackman, and they showed him saying that we cannot have incitement now. And what is the incitement, by the way? There are a lot of people now who were waving the Israeli flags on Jerusalem Day. It's a thing that we've done every year for 30 years or more, I think. And it's a very happy parade where the youth go down and they're dancing in the streets and they're singing and they're waving and dancing with the Israeli flag. It's not violent in any way or shape. There's no anger there. It's happiness. It's singing. It's dancing. They want to do it now in Jerusalem because of the war with Hamas. It stopped the regular, usual parade that we had, and so they want to do it now. No problem, right? We're going to have a parade. We have parades in Israel all the time. In fact, we just had a parade last week of the gay parade who marched down Jerusalem streets against the majority of the wishes of Jerusalem residents. And there were 3,000 policemen put there to protect the people who wanted to march in the gay parade. 3,000 police they put out. Now we have a bunch of youth who want to dance with the flag and happiness here in our holy city, in the capital city of Israel. And what's going on now? The Hamas terrorists who just signed a ceasefire with us are saying and threatening that they will now break the ceasefire agreement if Israel has this flag parade in Jerusalem. They're screaming again the same thing that they screamed last time, that Al-Aqsa, their mosque, is being threatened, and this is they're Judaizing Jerusalem, which is a joke. It's like saying they're Americanizing apple pie. Okay, apple pie is not a Japanese dish or a Chinese dish or an Indian dish. I'm talking about Hodu, India, the country of India, etc. But of course, we know what the PLO and the terrorists say. They try to claim all of Israel as theirs and say that there never was a temple here. There never were kings of Israel. The Jews were never here. It's not our home, that we're the occupiers. They turn history on its face. So this is what we're seeing happening now. The terrorists are threatening to open a war again against Israel if we dare to wave our flags in the street and sing along and go in the street of Jerusalem. Now, a lot of people are incensed by this. Can you imagine if we hold this parade? Two things can happen. One, there could be a war. It could be that the Hamas terrorists will break their word. What's new there? They do it all the time because we've been in so many wars with them. It's always because they opened it up. That's one thing that can happen. So you can have a spark here in the Middle East, or you can have the prevention of Bennett and Lapid becoming the next prime ministers of Israel and having this coalition rule Israel. It can happen. Because the Arabs, if war opens up, if the Hamas get angry and start shooting rockets at Israel and we start hitting Gaza back, the Arabs who are supporting this left-wing coalition, and they need the Arabs in there to make their 61 seats at least that they need to get into the Knesset, it would mean that they wouldn't have the amount of seats that they need and they can't make a government. And we would probably go to new elections again. So very, very interesting what's happening. That's why I said anything can happen. And Israelis are upset. Who is running this country? Is it Israel and the Israeli citizens and democracy and government and law and order? Or is it a bunch of ragtag terrorists from the Gaza Strip? The Hamas is going to tell us what to do? I wanted to read something to you, and I see I don't think I have time. I'll try to do the best I can. And this was written by Paula Stern. It was going around WhatsApp. It says here, when a Jew cannot march in the streets of Jerusalem waving an Israeli flag because the current and future proposed defense minister considers that a provocation, it is time for a new government. The first Flag Day was effectively canceled by Gaza's attack on Jerusalem and Israel that led to an 11-day war. There is a proposal that it be held on June 10th, and some Israeli leaders, primarily on the left, suggest this is a provocation and might endanger the new coalition that's coming up. Hamas threatening to restart the war. Okay, I don't have time to read more. But this is the situation that we're finding ourselves in de facto. Who is really holding the reins here? And Israelis are angry. When we get back, I am going to be bringing on a resident of Ashkelon who made a video that's been going around WhatsApp, and it's very powerful, and he's going to tell us what he thinks people should do. Don't go anywhere, everybody. We're going to be right back. This will be a very exciting segment.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I'm Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and I've been talking to you about the possible left-wing coalition government that is looking like it could take place, but I said a lot can happen until the official vote comes in that they will be the next government. And one of those things is if Hamas opens a war against Israel, that could torpedo their government because the Arabs would leave. And another thing would be that Bibi just has to basically throw a wrench in the wheels there. He doesn't have to make a coalition. He just has to make sure that the left doesn't make a coalition, and then we would go to new elections and Bibi would have another chance to win. So what is happening here in Israel? We have a lot of angry citizens who have heard the news that the Hamas terrorists are threatening to break the ceasefire with Israel if we go and have a flag parade in our capital city. And one of the people that I'm going to be interviewing now actually made a video that went around, and he was very passionate about that. It's been making its rounds around WhatsApp, to say the very least. And I'd like to introduce him. We have joining us now. Where are my notes here? We have Moti joining us. Moti is a longtime citizen of Ashkelon. He was going through all the rocket attacks that took place just several days ago. Moti Ben Yitzchak is his name, and again, he's a longtime resident, and he has a lot to say. Welcome to the show, Moti.
Hi, and thank you for having me on. As a pleasure. It's always great to be here.
It's always great to have you on.
Did I get wound up this morning? And if I offended anyone, I apologize. But I've just got to tell you, when I heard that our defense minister was telling us Jews that in Israel, the land of the Jews, we cannot raise our flag, our Jewish flag, in our capital, in the Jewish capital, in Yerushalayim, we cannot wave our flag. Something has gone wrong. The world is absolutely upended. I don't understand it, Tamar. I'm trying to get a grip of it. But look, can you imagine if the Secretary of Defense in the United States woke up this morning and said to everyone in a radio broadcast, hey guys, you've got to remove those American flags from your lawns. We don't want them anymore because some Muslim may get upset, some Hamas member may get upset. And this is what they're asking us to do, to take down our flag. I cannot think of anything which is going to challenge the peace of this country than a Jew in government saying we have to hide our Israeliness, we have to hide our Jewishness. We might as well cut off our beards, we might as well take the kippot off our heads. Because if we're embarrassed by our flag, then we're embarrassed by our very existence. This has got to stop. He's gone a step too far. And you talk about this government, this coalition government being formed next week. Listen, the whole raison d'etre is to get out one man, to get out Bibi. We all know that. their ideologies are so diverse that this coalition isn't going to last more than a few minutes, let alone days or weeks. But that's besides the issue. You know, in Ashkelon, we've had to put up with a lot. We've had to put up with rockets coming in, with our children crying and wetting the bed because of the fear of Hamas from Hamas. And now you're telling us that because we fear Hamas might get upset, we can't wave the Israel flag. Something, Tamar, is going wrong in our society. I don't know what it is, but I've got to act now. I've got to come to Yerushalayim. And I hope thousands upon thousands of people come with me, with our flags, and to show this is the land of Israel. This is the land of the Jews. This is our flag, and we will wave it whenever and wherever we want.
All right, Moti, I want to play devil's advocate just for a moment, because I'm sure that there are people with other opinions, and they're probably thinking, yes, you're right, but, you know, we need to have a government. Can't we just wait to have this parade until after the government is sworn in? What would you say?
Tamar, there are some things which are beyond a government. They are beyond a government. And the response of the defense minister, this is the man whose job it is to defend us Jews here in the land of Israel. This is his job. The response of Hamas will be to say, we told those Jews that if they wave their flags on June the 10th, that we will send rockets and we will cause a pogrom in their towns and we will burn their shuls again. And because of the fear, their defense minister told them not to do it. This is beyond internal politics. This is now about Hamas claiming that they control the government of Israel, that the government of Israel is so afraid that they won't even allow us to put our flags up. I don't care whether we're having a change of government or not. No one should tell us, the Jews, we have suffered enough. For 2,000 years, we prayed for this land. Since the beginning of the 20th century, we started dying for this land. And it's not stopped when a Jew tells us we cannot raise our flag over our capital city. Something has
Moti,
gone
I just
wrong.
want to add in here that, if this government cannot
Hamas is going to interpret this
a flag
as
parade,
a victory.
because the Arabs will pull out of it, then what kind of government can it be in any case?
Listen, we all know what this coalition is. This coalition, its raison d'etre is to get Bibi out. Once it's got Bibi out, it will crumble. It will crumble because you have the Bennett, so-called right wing. He wants to go one way. Supposedly he supports the settlements. But on the other hand, you've got the Arab parties who say we want to close down the settlements. You've got the left wing of Lapid and Meretz, my lord, Meretz, who want to destroy our economy. You know, a lot of people might say, they don't like Bibi for this, they don't like Bibi for that. But the truth is, he's been in power as Prime Minister for 12 years. Israel has never been stronger. Israel has never been economically more powerful, never been more militarily as powerful as this. And okay, the time may be for him to step down. But this coalition that they've thrown together, it will fall apart when their raison d'etre, the only reason they'll exist is to get Bibi out. Once they got Bibi out, they'll have nothing in common, they'll fall apart. We'll have another election, and I look forward to another election, because we need a proper government. We need a government not sewn together because of hate of this one or hate of that one. We need a government that has Israel's heart in its heart. And that government, for me, it'll be a right-wing government. For others, it'll be more centrist or left-wing, whatever. But it needs to be a government that's formed for the right reasons, not for the sick reason of get Bibi out, whatever the cost.
Right. And, I think this is a good litmus test, again, that if this coalition cannot stand up to just having a parade of a flag parade in Jerusalem, better we know before they become become the government than afterwards, because then we're really in trouble.
Tamar, let me stop you there. If this government is going to be so weak that it cannot even allow Jews to raise their flag over Jerusalem, what sort of government have we got? And that's the question that everybody should be asking themselves. All those people who celebrate we've now got a government, we don't have a government, because what we have is a government so weak it won't even allow us to raise our flag over Jerusalem, the city, the capital city of Eretz Israel, the capital city of the Yehudim, which we have prayed for so many thousands of years. What sort of government is this?
Very, very well said. And again, if they can't survive a simple thing like this, then they won't be able to survive being in a government. And as you said, it's pretty much a one platform or one ideology of just get Bibi out. But the only other thing that they have in common, I think, is just their personal ambitions, which is really sad. But again, like you said, if they can make a government, if they can stick together, if they have Israel's real interests at heart, let them go for it. We've survived left-wing governments before. We've survived right-wing governments, et cetera, and we'll get through this as well. But if it's so fragile, as you said, everyone has their doubts about how this is going to hold up.
I think Israel is so strong. I think the people are so strong that we can put up with an awful lot, even with a bad government. Whether you think the current government's good, the next government will be good, it doesn't matter. We'll always somehow be able to muddle through. And you know what? There's an old expression that give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves. And I think that's always the case with a bad government. You give them enough rope, they hang themselves. We go for an election, we get a good government. But it starts at this first hurdle, and it's a big hurdle, because this goes to the center of the whole Zionist dream, that we can freely stand on the hills of Yerushalayim and wave our flag.
Yes, you know what? I just want to say this before we go.
Have we now got a government that says you can't even wave the flag? You can't even stand there like a proud Jew. Well, I can tell you, I'm a proud Jew. There are thousands of proud Jews out there. And whilst I would not have considered going on this march in Jerusalem, because I live in Ashkelon, I do my own march here. Because of what they said,
we got to hold it there. We got to go to a break. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Moti Ben Yitzhak from Ashkelon. Very passionate and I believe very right. Thank you for being with us. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Bentako, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and we're now speaking with Dr. Mordechai Ben Menachem. He's a researcher, former lecturer at Ben-Gurion University, and has authored over 80 books and 400 research papers on science, history, and more. He commentates on Mideast and world issues. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mordechai Ben Menachem.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we are looking at a possible new government, which will be left-wing, headed by Naftali Bennett, and then rotated the prime ministership to Yair Lapid. Although a lot can happen until this new government is sworn in the Knesset. So, like if there's a war with Hamas, etc., then this whole coalition bloc could break up. What do you have to say about what's going on?
Well, first of all, people should be aware that this government is by no means a done deal. It's a reasonably good chance that it will occur, but it's not clear. But I want to talk about the challenges that face it, because a lot of things are happening all around the world today, and all four of these people that claim to control this so-called coalition, none of them have any experience in anything that deals with international affairs, security, or anything else. They're all very, 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 very green. And green in the unripe sense, not in the non-carbon sense. So let's look at a few of the challenges, the things that are going on around the world. Right, let's start with the Far East. Okay? Japan is waking up. Japan is coming out of its post-World War II hibernation. It's asserting itself. It's building a very powerful Navy and Air Force and developing some extraordinary technologies in terms of military technologies. And it is challenging China actively. It's becoming allied with Taiwan. It's in active discussions now with Russia. There is no peace treaty between Russia and Japan since the World War II. They're trying to finally finalize that. Japan is waking up. Can these people negotiate with an assertive Japan as well as an assertive China? That's not clear. Let's start moving over. India is getting more and more assertive. It will probably within the next 3 or 4 years or so become the largest country in the world, larger than its population is about to surpass that of China within a very short period of time. And concurrently with that, it is also asserting itself in the Indian Ocean on both sides of India, which means that India at any point in time can now block all energy supplies to China if they decide to do that.
So are you saying that the whole world is on the verge of going to war, this one with that one with this one?
I didn't say war. What I'm saying is that a lot of places are waking up. When the most powerful nation in the world, which used to be the United States up until a year ago, is viewed as being extraordinarily weak, not just weaker, but very, very weak, and incapable of functioning on any reasonable level. Well, then a lot of other players are coming on board. Just to give you a trivial example, but I think it gives it serves to show something. I received a book in the mail on Friday. It had been sent on the 14th of January. In other words, the American Postal Service doesn't work. It's totally broken, and that can be said for almost every area of the United States government. Almost every area is broken, and the world sees this. So the major players in the world, be it Russia, China, Iran, the Middle East, the Far East, every place is waking up and saying, "Well, hey, the giant has gone to sleep. We can go off and do our things now by ourselves. We can start doing things which we never dared to do before."
Well, maybe not that they get to, but they have to now, because they can't rely on America. They perceive America as being weak today, and therefore any of their allies are now more vulnerable.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Japan is waking up because it suddenly realizes that it cannot rely upon the United States. The United States isn't there. It's AWOL. It's absent without leave.
And Israel as well.
And Israel as well, of course.
And Saudi Arabia
that's the
as
danger
well.
In us bringing online a very weak government as well. This government, even if it does succeed in creating itself, remember, 8 factions of tremendously disparate philosophies that have only one purpose. Only one. This government has one purpose only, and that is to unseat Netanyahu. In other words, the day after it is formed, it no longer has a reason to exist. So will it continue to exist? It's pretty unclear. I'm saying that we're heading towards a 5th election within a very short period of time.
Yeah, so we were talking about the Go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead.
So I'm saying the world is waking up. Everything is moving. Everything, everywhere. Even places in Africa that have been asleep for centuries. You know, people are talking about the so-called climate crisis, which doesn't really exist, but that's besides the point. For the first time in over 1,000 years, people living in sub-Saharan Africa are starting to see a greening of the Sahara. In other words, people in Africa will finally have enough to eat. They will not be dependent upon the former slave masters in Europe. That scares the Europeans tremendously. That's part of the sourcing of the whole invented climate crisis. They don't want Africa to wake up. They want Africa to be subservient to them. But Africa, when it has enough to eat, is going to be very powerful. Africa, within a decade or two, will be a player on the world stage that it has not been for several centuries now.
I mean, other than natural resources, I mean, what kind of production is there in Africa that they can sell to the world? I mean, besides diamonds and wood, other resources.
Well, first of all, resources are extraordinarily important. The maladroit administration in Washington has now announced that they don't want any more mines in the United States, so they're going to be dependent upon other places for mining. They came out with this red-headed jerk, who's the spokesperson, said anybody can dig a hole, which is a very stupid thing to say, of course, but that's besides the point. So Africa has a great deal to offer, and it's going to offer it. So does South America, Latin America. Every place is waking up. Weakness has its price, and we all need to be aware of that.
Absolutely, because people like winners. They don't like weak people and weak nations. So tell me this. We only have like another 2 minutes left. How do you want to sum everything up, and what should we take away from this?
Well, we should take it away from it. First of all, in terms of Israel, expect this government, if it forms, to be extremely shaky and very unlikely to last very long. In other words, there is very little chance of an actual rotation taking place. There's very little chance of this government lasting more than a bare minimum of months. It will probably be the weakest government we've ever had.
Yeah, probably. Because their bonds are so weak. What binds them together? I mean, come on. Naftali Bennett sitting with the Arabs and sitting with Meretz, the far left-wing progressive, anti-Zionist parties. It's crazy.
Total madness. Totally ridiculous. As I said, the day they're formed, they no longer have a reason to exist.
And as I was saying in previous segments before you were on, that if they can't they're so afraid that if we have a flag parade in Jerusalem, that it's going to mess up the coalition, that the Arabs may drop out because the Hamas might start throwing missiles again at us, and so Israel would have to retaliate, and the Arabs would go out of the coalition because they're not going to be in a government that's hitting, their brothers. in Gaza, this is a good litmus test. If they can't even do this, withstand a flag parade, how are they going to be able to run the country? And on top of that, I would like to see Naftali Bennett, I would like to see Gantz and Lapid get up and say, we're going to raise and dance with our flags in our capital city, whether you like it or not. This is our country. We're doing it. And we encourage our citizens to love our country. I would like to see that.
I would like to see that as well, but I don't think they have the courage to do that.
Courage. That's another thing. Well, that's for another show. That's for another show. We need some good, strong leadership. Listen, I'm not a lover of Bibi. I'm not a hater of Bibi. I think he's the best we've got in the meantime, and the strongest we've got in the meantime until a better leader, Halavite, be the Mashiach, the Messiah, comes. But Israel should remain strong, and whatever happens, let's just pray that our leadership, whoever they are, does have the courage to do the right thing. Thank you, everybody. You've been listening to the Tamar Yonah Show here at Israel News Talk Radio.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.